A serious medical crisis can overwhelm a family physically, emotionally, and financially. But you will love discovering from Monique McCoy how the amazing Brent's Place provides wraparound services to provide families the best chance for treatment, healing, and positive outcomes. On this episode of Making Our World Better.
Welcome to the Making Our World Better podcast, where you will find motivation and encouragement through lively conversations with inspirational people who every day are making our world a better place. Now, here's your host, Jay Clark.
Welcome to the podcast. I am Jay Clark, and I am thrilled to have a conversation with Monique McCoy, Vice President of External Affairs for the incredible Brent's Place, an organization born out of heartbreak that helps families facing life-threatening medical crises. Monique has been with Brent's Place since 2020 and has more than 20 years of experience as a nonprofit professional, including more than a decade with Children's Hospital Colorado and a stint with Susan G. Komen. She has also been an entrepreneur and a business development director for a video production company. She holds a degree, get this, in molecular, cellular, and developmental biology from the University of Colorado Boulder, go Buffs, and she also served on the steering committee for the Institute for Leaders in Development at the University of Denver. I love celebrating strong women leaders, and I can't wait to learn more about Brent's Place and get into all this. So Monique, welcome, and thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Jay, for inviting me.
Well, I would love to start simple. And just how would you describe Brent's Place and its mission to somebody who's never heard of it?
Yeah, so Brent's Place has been around for 27 years now, but we joke that we're the best kept secret in Denver, and we don't want to be. The work that we do, I think, is really essential to healthcare access and for families to not feel alone when they're on a medical journey. So what we provide is really a home away from home for families that have to travel to find specialty care and all the wraparound support so that while they're away from their home community, they have a support community here at Brent's Place. So we provide free housing for the entirety of their medical treatment, as well as all of the free, no cost to our families.
Wow.
And that's thanks to a really generous community of supporters and partners that help us to carry forward our mission. And not just a roof over their head. We're also providing them with all of the comforts of home. So we have a nourishment program so that after a long day at the hospital, they come home to a hot meal and don't have to worry about that.
Awesome.
All kinds of individualized family support that we are just here to try and make their journey a little bit easier. It's the toughest time in their life, and we want to support them through it and heal through it.
No kidding. Well, I'd love for you to go a little deeper into the organization's history, where the name comes from and why it was founded, all of that.
Absolutely. It is a remarkable history. It really is born out of tragedy, but turned into a legacy of love. So our founders, Don and Linda Ely, back in 1987, their son, our namesake, Brent Ely, was diagnosed with a rare form of pediatric cancer. And like all parents, would have gone to the ends of earth to try and find a cure for their son.
Right.
They went to Iowa, because at the time, Children's Hospital Colorado did not have a bone marrow transplant, and that was Brent's best chance for survival. So they had to uproot themselves from the Denver community that they knew and loved and went to Iowa to try and save their son's life. Unfortunately, after 162 days of a really valiant fight, they came home without Brent. And on that ride home, literally as they were coming home, they were resolved to make sure that other families didn't have an experience like theirs, where they had to piece it all together. So that's the impetus of Brent's Place, to be a one-stop shop for families that are going through medical crisis, so they can focus all their energy on the healing of their loved one.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that every situation and every crisis, the families you serve is a little different, but what are some of the similarities that families who come to Brent's Place share?
Yeah, I think that's another piece of the evolution of Brent's Place, is that we started off really focused on bone marrow transplant patients like Brent, and have expanded over the course of those 27 years to really serve families of all dynamics, and whether the patient is the child or the patient is the parent. So now we have both pediatric and adult patient programs.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so serving a broad range of folks, as well as looking at what other audiences, what other populations need us. And so a few years ago, we expanded to solid organ transplant patients, so
Oh,
heart
wow.
transplant, liver transplant, kidney transplant. What we really specialize in is an environment for the immune compromised patient. And so we have specialty, what we call safe, clean guidelines, so that while they're here with us at Brent's Place, they don't have to worry about those, something for you and I that would be dander or bacteria that our systems could fight off.
Right.
Their loved one's immune system is non-existent. And so they need that extra specialty housing. So the commonality is that families heal better together. And
Mhm.
so all of our families, regardless of what their diagnosis is, we believe that keeping them together, giving them all the support, gives them the best chance to be able to fight their fight.
Well, I would think that stuff with the immuno and the clean rooms, I was reading about that. It's fascinating. I would think that, that's a little bit of a differentiator for you guys.
It is. I think that we have a medically vulnerable population that we serve, and so
Yeah.
we are uniquely positioned to be able to think of the things that we don't want them to have to worry about, and to be able to have facilities and guidelines, and like I said before, the community and the partnerships that help us to advance our mission. We wouldn't be able to do this without an army of folks behind us that
Uh,
are really focused on the well-being of these families.
well, and that's the thing is when you think about the situation and the stress that these families are under when they face these kind of crises, and everybody that you guys serve in, the stress has to be just unimaginable. I mean, you can't possibly relate to it unless you've gone through it. So, kind of walk us through the journey of being a Brent's Place family and talk about all the things that you guys do that really lets them focus on the treatments and the recovery. I mean, really, when you talk about wraparound services, that's what you guys do.
Yeah, and I will try not to get emotional, but I do want to share a story here because
Yeah.
being connected to nonprofit healthcare related causes for 20 years now,
Mhm.
it never really hit close to home. I was just motivated by the missions that I served and the people that I
Mhm.
got to work alongside and for. Um, but a couple years ago, my dad was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer,
Oh dear.
and they lived in California at the time, and this was, in the height of the pandemic, and my kids were headed back to school. My dad was planning on getting treatment here in Colorado, where we grew up. And I looked at my CEO, Sean Meyerhofer, and I said, I don't know what to do, but my dad needs Brent's Place. And he said, you don't have to think twice about that. We're not living our values if we are not extending the same service to others. So I was on the other side of the coin for the first time in 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And my parents lived where I worked, and I am forever grateful for what Brent's Place does for families, and my family included, that they had a safe place to stay that was in close proximity to the hospital where he would receive life-saving care, and that all of the little intentional touches that Brent's Place brings to a medical crisis, that they didn't have to worry about those. So, Jay, I can't say enough about the place that I work, but from the other side of it, to be a recipient of the care that Brent's Place delivers was life-changing.
Well, yeah, and you think about it, it's more than just chemo that people are going through. I mean, and this is a traumatic experience. So I love how part of what y'all do is like the mental health piece and helping people work through that. And ideally, in an ideal world, Brent's Place would go out of business, right? Because the services you provide aren't needed anymore. But sadly, you look at what's happening and your numbers are going up and your services continue to grow. So as the VP of External Affairs, what are some of the greatest challenges you face as you continue to grow and add capacity?
Yeah, it really is that idea of supply and demand, right? Like the demand will always be greater than one organization
Which is such
can.
a bummer.
Yeah,
That's
it
just
is.
that's the fact of life, right?
It is, and it's cancer and major medical crisis does not discriminate. It hits all of us at some point
Right.
in time. So we'll always be here. Our doors will always be open as a place of hope and healing for families that need us. But the demand is great, and the cost to be able to do what we do is also great. So like
Yeah.
before to have facilities where we're housing families, to have all of the different supports and comforts that are here at Brent's Place, it costs real money. And so as the VP of External Affairs, I am really looking to connect Brent's Place in the community with those that have either been touched by a similar by a similar problem in their own life, or just inspired to help others. So we really are focused on how do we connect our needs with the generosity and hearts of those out in the community. We have a really flourishing volunteer program where people can have hands-on experience, really impacting our mission. We have, like I said, just great generosity in our partnerships, our hospital partners, as well as just the everyday donor, the everyday community member that is touched by our mission.
And that's why you need to get the secret out so you can
Yeah.
expand that circle a little bit more. Hopefully we can help with that. But you've been with Brent's Place now for a little while. I'm sure you crossed paths with them when you were at Children's Hospital. So can you talk a little bit about, and you touched on it briefly, about kind of the evolution of Brent's Place? I mean, it started, hey, we got to help people with bone marrow cancer and bone marrow transplants. Now when you start talking about, oh, we do adults and it's all over. I mean, talk a little bit about that evolution and the transformation. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, our CEO always jokes that we've always been growing since the day we opened our doors.
Right.
But it is, when you look back on it, it is really, really remarkable. We started off with a staff of about 4, and we had 5 apartments down in the uptown area. We now own 2 buildings here in Aurora that has 32 apartments and 6 hospitality suites for those shorter term stays. Off campus for our adult program, we have another 38 units that we lease out of a complex. So just really exponential growth. And we are still growing. We are still trying to meet that demand for medically safe housing in close proximity to life-saving treatment. We've evolved in size and scope. We're now a team of about 23.
Wow.
Still small and mighty for what we're able to do.
Right.
Last year, we served 402 families, which
Wow.
over 1,600 family members that were with us, over 20,000 nights of service, over 14,000 meals were provided to that community.
Wow.
Growth is very much in the DNA at Brent's Place because we're driven to help.
Well, one of the other things that I love about it too is if somebody comes to you, they're not on a timeline. You'll support them as long as they need it.
That is right. Yeah.
Accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. Brent's Place sort of internal slogan at least, is once a Brent's Place family, always a Brent's Place family. So we are not determining when our families move out of their apartment. It is theirs for the entirety, that their medical team says that that's the best and safest place for them to be. And we average about 120 days on the pediatric side. So really focused on that long-term continuum of support. And then on the adult side, it's between 60 and 70 days because those treatment plans are a little different. But it's not uncommon for a family to be with us for a year or more. That's what their medical team says is needed, or they have complications in their treatment plan that require them to be with us for longer.
Well, and you can probably speak to this from what you went through with your folks. But again, going back to it, it's like, what does this do to your mindset when you come in and you're not thinking, oh my gosh, in 90 days, I got to find another place?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's got to just take such a load off.
That's what we hear from our families that, coming into it, they're already blindsided by this diagnosis that usually comes out of nowhere and knocks you off your feet.
Yeah.
And to not know how to proceed forward. So we talk about walking alongside our families and in their journey and taking all of the different avenues as they come. We're really trying to help them navigate and take away everyday burdens so that food, transportation, those things that if it's just us in our regular lives, we can navigate those. But when you have the burden of a medical crisis weighing on your mind and heart and spirit, it's hard to do just everyday things.
Yeah. But when you talk, you touched on this briefly, doing all these incredible services costs real money. And, a fact of life in nonprofits is the pressure to raise money is relentless. And you have to find a way to stand out. And it's hard. It's hard work. But what keeps you energized in doing this work that you're doing?
Yeah. We talk here at Brent's Place about the proximity to impact. I'm
writing that down. Proximity to impact. Love that.
I am sitting here in my office, and right above me, families are living the toughest days of their life. So it is not hard to come to work and have perspective of why and what you are here to do. So I am honored and humbled every day that I come to work. I am motivated by the people I work alongside and the people I work for to be able to provide a little bit of comfort and make things better for these families. That's what gets me up every day.
Well, when we talk about adding capacity and serving more needs, kind of what are some of your big audacious goals for the organization?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that. Like I said, we're always growing. And so we're looking into the future about how can we really have a paradigm shift over the next 5 to 10 years where we are setting the stage for what it means to be a healthcare housing complex and really creating a community that has all that it needs to be a thriving community during medical crisis. And so I would say what's on the horizon for Brent's Place is larger capacity to serve and serving in a deeper and broader way. We want to make sure that we are meeting each family where they are and that we're able to scale our operation so that we're always able to provide that individualized family support to every family that walks through our doors. So I think what's coming down the pipe is more and bigger and better because we just are, again, driven by our mission and by the families that we serve.
Well, and I know there's organizations out there that kind of do what you guys do. But I would also think a lot of what you're doing could really become kind of a national model or a template that you could take into other communities. Yeah,
the really interesting thing is that there are a lot of hospitality houses, is what we call it in industry, across the country. But a lot of them specialize in just pediatric or just adult. And so we really are one of a few that are trying to help families as our core mission, regardless of who the patient is. So I think that's a differentiator. And then long term, that sort of Brent's Place, once a Brent's Place family, always a Brent's Place family. Right. A lot of our counterparts across the country have more that short-term model and have almost like a hotel room. But imagine staying in a hotel room for months at a time, right? So our apartment model is something else that really stands us apart. And then those wraparound supports. A lot of the hospitality houses are the shelter needed to be in close proximity. But the depth of service that we provide here at Brent's Place and how we individualize it, I think is something really special that we want to continue to push towards. And this to create better outcomes from a healthcare standpoint, right? If you don't have those stressors, everyday stressors, what does that do for your heart transplant? Does it make it more efficacy when it comes to that? So I think that's another thing that's on the horizon for Brent's Place is how we connect the data points and the research to be able to show that staying in a place like Brent's Place is actually good business for the hospitals, for
No question.
insurance, for the payers, because we're going to provide better healthcare outcomes as well.
And I'm so glad you touched on that, because I was going to say, outside of just, I'm so less stressed, the financial impact of that is real.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the financial impact on the individual, but also, like I said, from a
The
business.
whole system.
Yeah, the whole healthcare system. If we can be, I can say that our healthcare system has multiple challenges, right? But
Right.
if we can plug some of those holes and make it more holistic for the patient, then that ripples out and it's more holistic for the system.
Well, you just read about the evils of stress and what that does physiologically and mentally to people. To suck that out of the equation, remarkable. I mean, it's a game-changing thing. And I would also think that, like you're saying, this stuff you do with the clean rooms and those kinds of facilities, that's expensive, and not everybody can do that, and not every place can offer that. But with your template, you can show people, hey, you can do this.
Exactly. I think having a real trauma-informed and tested model for 27 years now, we do want to share that with others. We are not competitive, we're collaborative, and ultimately, we just want to make sure that all families that find themselves in medical crisis do not have to walk their journey alone. And whether it's at Brent's Place or Ronald McDonald House, who are great partners of ours, regardless, we want to make sure that we're advancing our shared mission to help families.
Well, I had the chance, it was probably 1997 or 98. I sat in a meeting with Don Elian where he was talking about a vision for Brent's Place. And for him, it's got to be remarkable to sit back and go, okay, this is, we lost our son, but now what has grown out of that? It's remarkable. And it has to be a great source of pride for you too, because you've seen a lot of that same evolution too.
Yeah, it's funny you said that our big audacious goal, and the North Star was set by Don Ely, his big idea, as he calls it, way back when, and that entrepreneurial energy that he brought to starting a nonprofit and founding Brent's Place, it continues to be part of our DNA now. And he and Linda are still very much involved in the organization. They sit on the board. Linda volunteers at the front desk every other week.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we feel really fortunate that we have founders that are still really engaged, really involved, and that we are able to carry Brent's legacy forward in all of these different ways and in all the lives that are touched by his legacy.
Yeah. Well, shifting gears just a little bit, I find your background super fascinating. I mean, somebody who studied biology and got a degree at a high level at a prestigious university, then becomes a public relations expert and a nonprofit leader. If you were to go back and sit down with 22-year-old Monique, what would you tell her about this journey?
Oh my goodness, it's so funny. When I say my degree was in molecular biology, everybody turns their head like, what are you talking about? But I have always been kind of a science geek, and I was on the pre-med track and spent 4 years as a pharmacy technician at the University of Colorado Hospital.
Yeah.
And I think it jaded me a little bit being on the front lines in that way, seeing the challenges with insurance and payers and medications not working. And I said, how can I be part of this, but maybe not the actual impetus of it? And so I like many of my colleagues, I fell into development. I fell into nonprofit. No one, I don't know, maybe my kids, because they've seen it up close, but very few little kids are sitting around like, I want to be in a fundraiser.
I want to raise money, right? Yeah.
But it was a way for me to be connected to pediatric healthcare in a meaningful way at such a prestigious organization. Children's Hospital Colorado, really, they're the crown jewel of Colorado when it comes fundraising. So to be able to cut my teeth there, and then to translate that and scale it here at Brent's Place, it's almost as if I get to work on the same mission from a different angle. So it's been a wild ride. I think I would tell my 22-year-old self, hold on tight, because it's not what you expect, and it's not where you had pointed yourself when you were younger. But it's the most gratifying. When I came to Brent's Place, I found my forever work home. I'm
I was
really
going to say
here.
it's hard, but it's as gratifying that you can't even hardly explain unless you do it. But if you look back and think of some of the over your career, some of the leadership lessons that you've learned that you think you could share that other nonprofits leaders might benefit from.
Yeah. I think one of those is a principle that I think is coming forward more and more in our industry, even though we have nonprofit, so we don't have profit pushing us. We are businesses, and so I think we really have to be cognizant of the business aspect of our work, and really button up on the places where you need to operate like a business. As you really know
all of it.
Yeah. As you do noble work, you still have to function as a business. So I think that would be one place that I would say. I think the other thing, I work with the steering committee at the Institute for Leaders in Development. And in development, a lot of turnover happens. And there's a lot of burnout because we are passionate and we are working really hard for these missions. So I think the other leadership lesson is to pace yourself, to give yourself grace so that you can play the long game. And I think a lot of my time has been spent in loyalty to certain organizations for long periods of time, but that is not really the common narrative that you hear in this industry. So I would encourage nonprofit professionals to make sure you have your business in order, and then pace yourself.
That is a 5-star answer right there. But as we wind down, I'll hit you with the lightning round. I call them my Fab Four. The first one is, what is something that you will read, listen to, or watch today?
Well, I have tomorrow off, so it's technically my Friday. So
nice.
We on Fridays, and we'll extend it. My kids are off tomorrow as well. And so I have no doubt that we will be doing our Friday fun night and a movie night tonight on Thursday. My daughter wanted to rewatch the movie Harriet. We didn't get around to it last month, so I think that will be that'll be on the docket.
Perfect. Who would you call a role model for you in the work you're doing or in your career?
Awesome. That one's really easy. So my very first director, Jennifer Lackey, really set the tone for me. She is now the Chief Development Officer at the Food Bank of the Rockies.
Oh, wow.
Dear friend. And so she's my North Star of how to do this work.
Awesome. Great answer. So other than Brent's Place, is there an organization out there, again, kind of a hard question to answer, but is there an organization out there that you really admire their work or would love to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I would just go back to that partnership that we have with Ronald McDonald House. We do similar work, but we serve slightly different agendas and missions. But they are another model that we often collaborate and share with. And so I'll just give a shout out to Laura and her team over at Ronald McDonald House Denver.
Sounds like another podcast guest I need to chase. Lastly, most importantly, probably, if anybody wants to learn more about Brent's Place, support the work that you're doing, and help all these people that are in such difficult times, what's the best way?
Yes, I would encourage everyone to get to know Brent's Place more at brentsplace.org. Whether you donate, volunteer, or just become an ambassador for us out in the community and become that megaphone so that people know more about Brent's Place. We would appreciate your interest, your passion, and hopefully your support.
We will put that in the show notes. I highly recommend everybody go to brentsplace.org. It's a fabulous organization, but just pace yourself, keep up the great work, and thanks so much.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks for listening, and thanks to Monique for sharing about the amazing work Brent's Place is doing to help families. This podcast was brought to you by JC Charity Services. No matter the industry, positivity is the competitive advantage. And as a John Gordon Certified Power of Positive trainer, I'd love to bring that competitive advantage to your organization. You can find me at makingourworldbetter.com or jay@jccharityservices.com. Let's connect and talk about it. To learn more about Brent's Place and support its incredible work, visit brentsplace.org. And if you enjoyed this show, we'd be grateful if you'd share it with a friend. Until next time, I hope you're inspired to find a way to make our world better.